Introduction. Sophia had always been told she was too sensitive. As a child, she could sense when her mother was upset before a single word was spoken. In school, she was the friend everyone came to with their problems, the one who could feel others' pain as if it were her own. She wore her empathy like a badge of honor, until the day she realized it had become her prison. It was a Tuesday evening when the revelation hit. Sophia sat in her car outside her best friend's house, hands trembling as she gripped the steering wheel. She had just spent 3 hours listening to the same complaints, offering the same advice that would never be taken, and absorbing the same toxic energy that left her feeling hollow and exhausted. But this time was different. This time, she noticed something that made her stomach drop. Her friend had been smiling, actually smiling, as she described how overwhelmed and drained Sophia looked. There was a glint of satisfaction in her eyes, a subtle energy of someone who had just fed off another person's life force. In that moment, Sophia realized that her greatest gift, her ability to feel deeply and care unconditionally, had been weaponized against her by the very people she loved most. The people in her life weren't just accidentally taking advantage of her empathy. They were deliberately targeting it. Her ex-boyfriend would create drama whenever she tried to focus on her own goals. Her family members would guilt-trip her with phrases like, "I thought you cared about me," whenever she tried to set boundaries. Her colleagues would dump their responsibilities on her because they knew she couldn't say no to someone in need. Sophia sat in that car and made a decision that would change everything. She would learn to protect her gift without losing it. She would discover how to maintain her compassionate nature while building walls that kept the energy vampires out. She would transform her greatest vulnerability into her most powerful asset. This book is the roadmap she wished she'd had during those dark years of being everyone's emotional dumping ground while her own needs went unmet. Your gift is not the problem. The traditional advice given to empaths is fundamentally flawed. Society tells us we have two choices: either build walls so high that we lose our ability to connect authentically, or remain vulnerable and accept that being drained and manipulated is simply the price we pay for caring. This book rejects that false choice entirely. The truth is that your empathic abilities aren't the problem. It's the lack of proper boundaries, unhealed trauma, and energy management skills that make you a target. Your sensitivity is actually a superpower that, when properly channeled and protected, becomes an incredible asset in relationships, career, and personal growth. This book will teach you how to accomplish 3 essential transformations. First, you'll learn to protect your energy and emotions without becoming cold or losing your natural empathy. You'll discover advanced boundary-setting techniques that act like a sophisticated filtration system, allowing love and genuine connection to flow freely while blocking manipulation, guilt trips, and toxic energy. These aren't the rigid, relationship-damaging boundaries you've heard about before. These are intelligent, flexible boundaries that actually enhance your relationships by ensuring you show up as your best self. Second, you'll break free from toxic relationship patterns and recognize red flags before getting trapped. Through detailed pattern analysis, you'll discover why you keep attracting the same types of people and situations. More importantly, you'll develop an early warning system that helps you identify energy vampires, manipulators, and emotional predators before they can sink their hooks into your compassionate nature. Third, you'll heal past wounds that make you vulnerable to manipulation while building unshakable confidence. Many empaths carry childhood trauma that created their hypersensitivity to others' emotions as a survival mechanism. This book includes trauma-informed healing exercises that address the root cause of your vulnerability, not just the symptoms. You'll learn to distinguish between your emotions and others, develop healthy self-worth that doesn't depend on rescuing others, and build the kind of confidence that naturally repels toxic people. The goal isn't to become less empathic. It's to become a more empowered empath who can use their gifts intentionally rather than being controlled by them. If this sounds like you, this book is written specifically for the highly sensitive souls who have been told their entire lives that they're too much, too sensitive, too caring, too emotional, too giving. If you've ever felt like your empathy is both your greatest gift and your biggest curse, this book is for you. You're the person who can walk into a room and immediately sense the tension between two people who haven't even spoken. You're the friend everyone calls during their darkest moments because they know you'll drop everything to help. You're the one who feels guilty setting boundaries because you've been conditioned to believe that your worth comes from how much you can give to others. You're tired of being everyone's emotional support system while your own needs go unmet. You've noticed a pattern where you attract people who seem to need constant rescuing, validation, or emotional labor. Your relationships often feel one-sided, with you doing most of the giving while receiving very little genuine support in return. You struggle with saying no without feeling crushing guilt. The word no feels foreign in your mouth, especially when someone is in distress. You've been trained to believe that setting boundaries makes you selfish, even when you're running on empty and desperately need to recharge. You're exhausted from absorbing everyone else's emotions. You walk away from social interactions feeling drained, confused about which emotions are actually yours, and needing hours or days to recover. You might even avoid social situations altogether because the emotional overwhelm has become too much to handle. You keep attracting the same types of toxic people, despite your best efforts to choose differently. Whether it's narcissistic romantic partners, manipulative friends, or energy-draining family members, you seem to have a neon sign that attracts people who want to take advantage of your giving nature. You've tried traditional boundary-setting advice, but it either doesn't work or makes you feel like you're betraying your authentic self. The just say no approach feels too harsh and disconnected from your natural empathic responses. You want to maintain your compassionate nature while learning to protect yourself. This book is also for those who love an empath and want to understand how to support them without taking advantage of their giving nature. If you've watched someone you care about get repeatedly hurt by their own compassion, you'll find valuable insights for creating healthier dynamics. A revolutionary approach. Most books about empathy and boundaries fall into one of two camps. They either tell you to toughen up and build impenetrable walls, or they encourage you to embrace your sensitivity while accepting that you'll inevitably be hurt by others. Both approaches are incomplete and ultimately harmful. This book uses a revolutionary synthesis approach that honors the apparent contradiction between self-protection and compassion, then transcends it entirely. Instead of choosing between being vulnerable or being protected, you'll learn to be vulnerably protected, maintaining your open heart while developing sophisticated discernment about when, how, and with whom to share your energy. The content is based on trauma-informed healing principles rather than simple behavioral modifications. While other books focus on changing your actions, this book addresses the underlying trauma and conditioning that created your vulnerability patterns in the first place. You'll understand why your nervous system responds the way it does to manipulation, and how to rewire those responses at the neurological level. Every chapter includes hands-on exercises that you can complete in the privacy of your own home. These aren't just theoretical concepts, they're practical tools you can implement immediately. The exercises are designed to work with your empathic nature, not against it, using your sensitivity as a strength rather than trying to suppress it. The book addresses root causes, not just symptoms. Instead of giving you a list of boundaries to implement, it teaches you how to develop your own internal guidance system that naturally knows what boundaries are needed in each unique situation. Rather than providing scripts for saying no, it helps you heal the underlying wounds that make saying no feel impossible. Real-world case studies demonstrate how these principles work in complex, messy human relationships. You'll see exactly how other empaths have navigated challenging situations with family members, romantic partners, and colleagues while maintaining their authentic selves. Your transformation journey. This book will take you on a carefully structured journey from empathic overwhelm to empowered sensitivity. Each chapter builds on the previous one, creating a comprehensive system for protecting and channeling your empathic gifts. Here's what awaits you. Chapter 1: The empathy trap reveals why your greatest strength has become your biggest vulnerability, and how toxic people specifically target empathic individuals. You'll learn to distinguish between healthy empathy and codependent people-pleasing. Chapter 2. The Narcissist's GPS system exposes the specific traits and behaviors that make empaths irresistible to energy vampires and manipulators. You'll discover why you keep attracting the same problematic relationships and how to break the cycle. Chapter 3. The Childhood Wound Detective helps you uncover the early experiences that programmed your empathic responses as survival mechanisms. Through gentle trauma-informed exercises, you'll identify the source code of your current patterns. Chapter 4. The Boundary Architect teaches you to design intelligent, flexible boundaries that protect your energy without shutting out genuine connection. You'll learn the difference between walls and healthy boundaries. Chapter 5. The Energy Audit shows you exactly where your power leaks and how to plug them. You'll develop personalized energy management techniques that keep you grounded and centered, even in challenging situations. Chapter 6. The Trauma Alchemist provides step-by-step healing processes for transforming old wounds into wisdom. You'll learn to process absorbed emotions and return them to their rightful owners. Chapter 7. The Relationship Archaeologist helps you excavate toxic relationship patterns and rebuild healthier ones. You'll develop skills for recognizing red flags and choosing partners who enhance rather than drain your energy. Chapter 8. The Energy Shield Master gives you advanced protection techniques that actually work in real-world situations. These aren't just visualization exercises, they're practical tools for managing your empathic abilities. Chapter 9. The Compassion Compass shows you how to maintain your caring nature while protecting your well-being. You'll learn to give from overflow rather than depletion. Chapter 10. The Empowered Empath integrates all the previous lessons into a sustainable lifestyle that honors both your sensitivity and your need for protection. Throughout this journey, you'll discover that protecting your empathic gifts doesn't diminish them, it amplifies them. When you're not constantly drained by energy vampires and manipulators, you have more genuine compassion available for the people and causes that truly matter to you. You'll work through interactive assessments and diagnostic tools that help you understand your unique empathic profile. Not all empaths are the same. Some are primarily emotional empaths, others are physical empaths who feel others' pain in their bodies, and still others are intuitive empaths who pick up on unspoken thoughts and intentions. Understanding your specific type of empathy is crucial for developing the right protection strategies. Through detailed case studies and scenarios, you'll see how other empaths have successfully navigated challenging relationships and situations. These aren't sanitized success stories, they're honest accounts of the messy, complicated process of learning to honor both your sensitivity and your need for protection. Your commitment to change. Reading this book won't change your life, working through it will. The transformation from overwhelmed empath to empowered sensitive requires more than intellectual understanding. It requires a willingness to challenge some of your deepest beliefs about what it means to be a good or caring person. You may discover that some of what you've been taught about kindness is actually a form of self-abandonment. You might realize that your tendency to rescue others has been enabling their dysfunction while preventing your own growth. You could find that people you've considered friends have actually been feeding off your energy in ways that aren't healthy for either of you. This process requires courage. The courage to disappoint others when necessary, to prioritize your own well-being, and to trust that you can be both compassionate and boundaried. It requires you to question long-held beliefs about your role in other people's lives and your responsibility for their emotions. Make this commitment to yourself. You will work through each chapter's exercises with an open mind and a willingness to experiment with new ways of being. You will practice the techniques, even when they feel uncomfortable or unfamiliar. You will challenge the voice in your head that says setting boundaries makes you selfish or uncaring. Most importantly, you will trust that your empathy is not something to be fixed or suppressed. It's a gift to be honored, protected, and channeled in ways that serve both you and the world around you. Your journey from empathic overwhelm to empowered sensitivity starts now. Are you ready to transform your greatest vulnerability into your strongest asset? 1. The empathy trap: why your greatest gift became your biggest weakness. When kindness becomes your prison. Catherine sat in her therapist's office, tears streaming down her face, as she recounted another exhausting week of saying yes to everyone except herself. "But if I don't help them, who will?" she whispered. Her therapist leaned forward and asked a question that would change everything. "When did you learn that your worth depends on your usefulness to others?" This question strikes at the heart of what many empaths face daily. The very gift that makes them extraordinary human beings has somehow transformed into an invisible cage, trapping them in cycles of depletion and overwhelm. The programming behind the prison. From childhood, empaths receive a dangerous message that their value lies in their ability to absorb others' pain and fix their problems. Society celebrates the selfless person, while subtly shaming those who dare to prioritize their own needs. This creates a toxic conditioning where empaths equate boundaries with cruelty and self-care with selfishness. The programming runs deep and often begins before empaths can even recognize it happening. Cultural messaging that equates empathy with endless availability. Modern culture sends a clear signal that truly caring people are always accessible and always willing to drop everything for others. This creates an impossible standard that leads directly to burnout and resentment. Think about the praise heaped on the person who answers work emails at midnight, or the friend who never says no to helping with a crisis. These messages create a false belief system where empaths think they must be constantly available to prove their compassion. The idea of turning off their phone, saying no to a request for help, or prioritizing their own needs feels like a betrayal of their core identity. Daniel learned this lesson early when his elementary school teacher praised him for giving up his recess to help struggling classmates with their work. The validation felt incredible, but it set a pattern where he measured his worth by how much he sacrificed for others. 40 years later, he still struggles to take vacation days without checking work emails. The good person trap that keeps empaths overextended. The fear of being seen as mean, uncaring, or selfish drives empaths to say yes when they mean no. This creates a destructive cycle where their kindness becomes a prison rather than a gift. The good person trap operates on the assumption that caring people never disappoint others, never prioritize themselves, and never express frustration or anger. This trap is particularly insidious because it uses the empath's greatest strength against them. Their natural desire to help and heal becomes weaponized by both others and their own internal critic. Consider the common scenarios empaths face. Being asked to work late again because you're so understanding. Friends calling during personal time because you always know what to say. Family members expecting constant emotional support without reciprocating. Colleagues dumping their problems because you're such a good listener. Each time an empath says yes when they want to say no, they reinforce the prison walls around themselves. Religious and familial programming around sacrifice and service. Many empaths grew up in environments where self-sacrifice was glorified and personal needs were minimized. Religious teachings about putting others first, familial messages about being the good child, and cultural narratives about noble suffering create deep-seated guilt around self-advocacy and boundary setting. Catherine remembers her grandmother's constant refrain, "Good girls think of others before themselves." This message, delivered with love and good intentions, created decades of internal conflict. Every time she wanted to prioritize her own needs, she heard her grandmother's voice labeling her selfish. The programming often includes specific beliefs that keep empaths trapped. If I don't help, something terrible will happen. Other people's needs are more important than mine. I should be able to handle everyone's problems. Saying no means I don't care enough. My feelings don't matter as much as other people's feelings. The identity crisis of the overwhelmed empath. Daniel grew up in a household where his mother constantly reminded him that good boys think of others first. By age 35, he found himself managing everyone else's emotions at work while his own stress levels skyrocketed. His panic attacks began when he realized he had no idea who he was, outside of what others needed him to be. This identity crisis is common among empaths, who have spent years defining themselves solely through their service to others. They become so focused on meeting external needs that they lose touch with their own desires, boundaries, and authentic self. The crisis often manifests in several ways. Physical exhaustion that doesn't improve with rest. Emotional numbness, despite constant interaction with others. Resentment toward the very people they're trying to help. Anxiety about disappointing others, even in small ways. Loss of personal interests and hobbies. Difficulty making decisions without considering everyone else's opinions first. The paradox of compassionate self-destruction. The most heartbreaking aspect of this trap is that empaths often destroy themselves in the name of compassion. They give until they have nothing left, believing this demonstrates their caring nature. However, this approach ultimately serves no one well. When empaths operate from depletion, their ability to truly help others diminishes significantly. They become reactive rather than responsive, offering solutions born from exhaustion rather than wisdom. The quality of their support deteriorates even as the quantity increases. Catherine realized this truth when she snapped at her teenage daughter, after spending 3 hours on the phone with a friend in crisis. Her daughter's hurt expression made her understand that her endless availability to others was stealing presence from her own family. The paradox reveals itself clearly. Empaths must learn to care for themselves not despite their compassionate nature, but because of it. Breaking free from the prison. Understanding that kindness has become a prison is the first crucial step toward freedom. This awareness allows empaths to begin questioning the beliefs and patterns that keep them trapped. It opens the door to exploring what healthy compassion looks like, versus the self-destructive version they've been practicing. The journey ahead involves learning to distinguish between genuine empathy and people-pleasing, between healthy helping and codependent rescuing. It requires developing the courage to disappoint others in service of their own well-being, and the wisdom to recognize when their help actually enables rather than empowers. As we move forward to explore how narcissists and energy vampires seem to find empaths so easily, remember that your recognition of this prison is already the beginning of your escape. Your compassion is meant to be a strength, not a sentence. Decode your empathic trigger points. Every empath has a unique vulnerability blueprint, specific emotional triggers and patterns that make them susceptible to manipulation and energy drain. Understanding your personal blueprint is like having a GPS for your emotional landscape. It helps you navigate relationships with awareness rather than reactivity. These trigger points aren't random weaknesses. They're precisely carved vulnerabilities created by our life experiences, particularly those formative moments when we learned how to survive in our families and early social environments. The troubling reality is that manipulative people can spot these patterns with frightening accuracy. Think of it this way: if healthy people are looking for genuine connection and compatibility, energy vampires and narcissists are scanning for exploitable weaknesses. They're not consciously thinking, "This person has abandonment issues I can use." Instead, they instinctively gravitate toward people whose wounds complement their manipulation style. Childhood wound patterns that create adult vulnerabilities. Unhealed experiences from our formative years create emotional blind spots that manipulators instinctively recognize and exploit. These wounds become like invisible signs, advertising our vulnerabilities to anyone skilled in emotional manipulation. The abandonment wound creates adults who will sacrifice almost anything to avoid being left behind. Children who experienced physical or emotional abandonment often develop an unconscious belief that they must earn love through perfect behavior or constant giving. As adults, these empaths become prime targets for people who use withdrawal of affection as a control tactic. Natalie grew up with a mother who would give her the silent treatment for days whenever she misbehaved. As an adult, she found herself in relationships where partners would disappear for days after arguments, and instead of recognizing this as manipulation, she would desperately try to fix whatever she had done wrong. The criticism wound produces perfectionists who exhaust themselves trying to avoid disapproval. Children who faced harsh criticism or impossible standards often develop hypervigilance around others' reactions. These empaths become easy targets for people who use criticism and nitpicking as control mechanisms. The neglect wound creates adults who are grateful for any attention, even negative attention. Children whose needs were consistently dismissed or minimized often grow up believing their needs don't matter. They become vulnerable to anyone who offers even minimal attention or care, regardless of the cost. The overwhelm wound stems from childhood roles where the child became the emotional caretaker for adults. These children learned that their value came from managing others' emotions and problems. As adults, they attract people who refuse to take responsibility for their own emotional well-being. Brandon became his family's emotional mediator at age 8 when his parents began fighting constantly. He learned to read micro-expressions and mood shifts with uncanny accuracy. 40 years later, he still automatically scans every room he enters, cataloging who needs emotional support, completely ignoring his own needs in the process. Specific emotional triggers that bypass rational thinking. Certain phrases, behaviors, or situations can trigger immediate emotional responses in empaths, causing them to abandon their boundaries and rush into rescue mode without considering the consequences. These triggers operate below conscious awareness, hijacking the empath's usually thoughtful decision-making process. Distress signals are particularly potent triggers. Phrases like, "I don't know what I'll do without you," or "You're the only one who understands me," can instantly activate an empath's rescue response. The empath feels simultaneously special and obligated, creating a perfect storm for boundary violations. Guilt triggers exploit the empath's natural tendency towards self-reflection and responsibility. Comments like, "I thought I could count on you," or "You've changed, you used to care about people," can send empaths into immediate damage control mode. Fear triggers activate the empath's protective instincts. Stories of potential disaster, threats of self-harm, or manufactured crises can cause empaths to drop everything and rush to help, even when the situation doesn't actually require their intervention. Comparison triggers exploit empaths' desire to be caring and helpful. Statements like, "Sarah would help me if I asked her," or "My ex would have understood," can trigger competitive helping behavior. The key insight here is that these triggers work so well because they activate the empath's genuine caring nature while simultaneously bypassing their critical thinking skills. The empath feels the familiar pull to help without stopping to evaluate whether help is actually needed or appropriate. The difference between intuitive empathy and trauma bonding. Learning to distinguish between genuine empathic connection and the false intimacy created by shared trauma or manufactured crises helps empaths make healthier relationship choices. This distinction is crucial because trauma bonding often feels more intense than healthy connection, making it appear more significant. Genuine empathic connection develops gradually and includes mutual respect for boundaries, reciprocal, emotional support, comfort with ordinary, non-dramatic interactions, growth and healing that occurs naturally over time, the ability to disagree without relationship threats. Trauma bonding creates artificial intimacy through intense emotional highs and lows, crisis-driven connection that requires constant drama to maintain, one-sided emotional support disguised as mutual vulnerability, rapid escalation of intimacy without corresponding trust building, fear-based attachment that feels like love. Natalie thought she had found her soulmate when Brandon shared his traumatic childhood story on their second date. The intensity of their connection felt profound, but she later realized it was built entirely on crisis and drama. Every interaction required emotional rescue or problem solving, and whenever life became calm, he would create a new emergency to reestablish the intense connection. The vulnerability map